"Congratulations on your marriage," I said. "Can you leave quickly after leaving some cash? It's unpleasant being around someone who is disabled." "I'm a working adult who has been married for a few years. I was in a car accident shortly after I got married and lost the use of both of my legs. Every week, I go to rehabilitation, but I still live in a wheelchair." When I first learned that I will be confined to a wheelchair, I was shocked. My wife, in-laws, and other family members have been very kind and caring to me. It has helped me stay positive and do my best during the difficult rehabilitation process. Because I worked from home, I was able to live comfortably in a wheelchair. My wife and in-laws were gracious to me. There is only one bothersome person in my life. The person is my wife's brother, my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law is an intelligent man who has a good reputation among his peers and gives the impression of being a nice young man. I thought he was a nice man when I first went to my wife's parents' house to greet him. When he discovered I had been in a car accident and was in a wheelchair, he revealed his true nature. "The worst part is that my brother-in-law is disabled. Don't make things difficult for our family." That didn't seem like the sort of thing to say to someone who had just been in a car accident. When my wife and I went to my in-laws, he said the following words to me. "Could you please do not put this wheelchair here? Leave it outside when you come into our house because it's in the way." I was mentally spent. My brother-in-law says this when we are alone without my wife or parents-in-law. It's a really sneaky thing to do. I was annoyed by my brother-in-law, but I put up with it because I assumed he was worried about my life. My brother-in-law continued to be sarcastic whenever I saw him after that. My brother-in-law then decided to get married. His bride was a daughter of the company's president for whom he works. My brother-in-law impressed the company's president, who asked him to marry his daughter. We gave our blessing to his marriage, regardless of the fact that she was the president's daughter. The wedding preparations continued, and we finally received the invitations. I marked the 10 box on the invitation and returned it. Everyone was excited for my brother-in-law's wedding. We arrived at the wedding venue stated on the invitation. Today's wedding was a lavish affair held at a well-known hotel. Because the bride was a daughter of the company's president, it appeared that many guests were invited. I was aware that the money spent on the wedding was substantial. Because my wife needed to use the restroom, I decided to wait in the corner of the ceremony hall. Then, from behind me, I heard a familiar voice. "The worst thing you can do is marry an ugly woman, but I'll put up with it because she's a boss's daughter. Getting married into a wealthy family, I'm going to be living the high life. I'll put up with marrying an unattractive woman if it means living happily ever after." My brother-in-law and his friends had been gossiping about the bride. After a while, my brother-in-law left and I returned to my wife. I debated telling my wife what I had just heard, but I couldn't tell her, who was overjoyed about my brother-in-law's marriage, so I decided to remain silent. My brother-in-law and in-laws were already conversing in the groom's waiting room when I arrived. "Congratulations on your marriage. Thank you for coming." He was so pleasant that I could not believe he was the one who had just been gossiping. "I'd like to speak with him alone. You two can go to waiting room and unwind." My brother-in-law led me down the empty hallway for some reason. His expression changed after he checked that no one was there. "What brought you here? Having a handicapped person in my family is a disgrace." He spoke in the same tone as when he talked badly of the bride. "Just go home after you paid for the celebration. It's inconvenient for the bride's family to have a disabled person here." Why should I be told this when I came to congratulate my brother-in-law on his wedding? I was enraged by my brother-in-law's remarks. However, it was also true that my presence in a wheelchair would annoy those around me. As my brother-in-law stated, I had no choice but to leave. "I'll make an appropriate excuse to my sisters." My brother-in-law laughed at me until the very end. My phone rang on my way home. It was my wife calling. My wife had called me in a panic when she realized I was missing. I told her I was on my way home, and she told me to return. You know how much trouble a handicapped person like me causes everyone, don't you? I kept it a secret that my brother-in-law had said this, and told her that my presence would only cause trouble. "Who said that to you?" "Nobody said anything like that." "And if anyone says that to you, I'll be the one to yell at them." I was really happy that my wife was upset as if it was said to her. After hearing my wife's word, I returned to the wedding. When I returned to the wedding, my wife ran up to me. My in-laws were relieved to see me return. "Why did you return? I told you that disabled people are a pain." My brother-in-law yelled at me when he found out I had returned. "Handicapped people in wheelchairs are the garbage of society, so get out." My wife snapped at him when she heard his outburst against me. My wife told him to stop calling me names, but he wouldn't listen. I told him that people with disabilities are not welcome here. I'm bothered by his presence. My brother-in-law's snide remarks about the disabled did not stop. A visitor overheard my brother-in-law and my wife arguing and approached them. The guests were taken aback by my brother-in-law's change in attitude, and there was a commotion in the ceremony hall. The bride and her father noticed something was wrong and approached us. My brother-in-law, on the other hand, did not stop making fun of the handicapped and continued to make rude remarks to me. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to play a recording for everyone to hear. "The worst thing you can do is marry an ugly woman, but because she's the boss's daughter, I'll put up with it." My brother-in-law and his friend became agitated when I played the recording. "What the hell? This recording's made up." My brother-in-law appeared distressed and began making excuses. I ignored my brother-in-law's request to stop the recording and kept playing it. I continued to play, ignoring my brother-in-law. "I'm going to be the celebrity now, like I'm going to be rich." My brother-in-law's face was flushed and he trembled. "I'm willing to marry an ugly woman if it means I can have so much money and play around for the rest of my life." The invited guests began to murmur after the audio had finished playing. My brother-in-law's face had turned pale after being read earlier. He couldn't respond to them other than to open his mouth wide. In fact, this recording was of my brother-in-law and his friends before the ceremony began. My brother-in-law and his friends were talking to each other without realizing they were being recorded. When my brother-in-law discovered the truth, he attempted to seize me, but someone else moved faster than he did. It was the father of the bride. He took a position in front of my brother-in-law and applied silent pressure to him. "Mr. President, I apologize, but there is a deeper reason for this." My brother-in-law, who was unaware of the bride's father's situation, began to make excuses. This disabled person is a fraud who is attempting to set me up. My brother-in-law claimed that I was to blame for everything. After listening to my brother-in-law, the bride's father spoke quietly. The bride's late mother was born with a disability. She had spent her entire life in a wheelchair. He stated that he wished to establish a business where people with physical disabilities, such as his wife, could work comfortably. He stated that he didn't need someone who thought like his brother-in-law in his company. The bride's father's word caused the brother-in-law to panic. "President, it's not my fault. It's entirely his fault." Nonetheless, my brother-in-law attempted to make amends with the bride's father. His excuses, however, were not accepted by the bride's father. The bride was shocked to learn that her groom had approached her for money. But she remained calm and stated that she would cancel the wedding and end the engagement. In a panic, my brother-in-law attempted to approach her, but the bride's father stopped him. The bride and her father finally apologized to the guests, and the ceremony was canceled. My brother-in-law collapsed to the ground and never got up. Many of the guests gave my brother-in-law and his friends cold stares as they left. My brother-in-law's remarks offended some of them. The bride said, demanded compensation for ending the engagement. The engagement and wedding were annulled, and the bride's family, as well as the guests, were informed of the wedding costs and everything that he had said. Furthermore, the bride's father is a well-known and powerful member of the local community. My brother-in-law was fired from the bride's father's company and tried to get a new job at another company, but no company would hire him, as they were afraid of the bride's father giving them grief. My brother-in-law attempted to get job referrals from his friends, but they all cut him off. My brother-in-law left town after failing to find work at any company. He worked all day and night to pay off the wedding expenses and compensation for the engagement in a faraway place. But he became crippled after a car accident. It's ironic that he became the handicapped person he was mocking. As for me, I am now able to walk on my own 2 feet, thanks to my wife's unwavering support and rigorous rehabilitation. On weekends, my favorite thing to do is go shopping with my wife. I like to repay my wife for the burden I put on her. Thank you for watching until the end.